All right. So in this particular hour, we want to focus on the state of economy and the state of the economy. And with us is Edwin H. Dande. He is the CEO of Cytonn Investments. Bwana CEO, karibu tena sana to Radio Generation.
Morning and asante sana. Glad to be here.
Yes, I don't know if you're listening to our conversation earlier on. Uko na SHA? Umeregister?
At least I know I pay SHA.
Yes.
Naona ikididaktiwa.
All right.
And yes, I'm registered.
Have you gone to hospital? Has it helped you? Have you used it?
I've been lucky that since I registered, I've not had to go to hospital. I
Okay.
try to stay fit.
Good for you.
But the stories I hear, I hope I don't encounter them when I finally get there.
Yeah. Don't worry. CEOs don't usually have these problems. Hata City anakuanga CEO of his household.
CEOs are ordinary people. It's just in the head.
Well, welcome nonetheless.
Asante sana.
Let's just talk about Cytonn for someone who's probably hearing it for the first, and I don't know who that is, but for the sake of getting it out of the way, what is Cytonn Investments all about?
Cytonn is about just the same way the name says, about investments. We, on one arm, we have an arm that receives money from investors. That arm is separated into two: private side and public. When we say private investment, that means I come and talk to you and say, this is an investment opportunity, we sign off, I get the money, I go invest for you. Public, that means I have to approach you in a regulated manner, either as an insurance company, as a pension fund, or as a money market fund. It's regulated by somebody, either Insurance Regulatory Authority, Capital Markets Authority, Retirement Benefits Authority. So those are the two things that we do on the investment side. We approach you privately or we approach you publicly. When we get that money, majority of it goes into real estate, around 10 different developments, but there's also a portion that goes into banks, and there's also a portion that goes into government securities. So in short, we raise money and we put into investment opportunity, and we give you a return. That's what Cytonn Investments is all about.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're into money market.
Money market. Actually, that's our leading product, Cytonn Money Market Fund. Star 809 hash, and you're in within a minute.
We start making money.
Yeah.
So if I give you guys $1 million bob today, and I'm taking $1 million bob because it's a round figure.
Yeah.
So if I give you $1 million bob today, what's my return in like a year?
Your return in a year is 13.5%. So that is around, if you give me $1 million bob, 135,000.
So if I give it to you today, is it August next year, I'm withdrawing 1.13 million.
Exactly. Minus your taxes. Remember,
Of course,
you have to pay the tax.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the tax on 130K?
The tax, whatever you make, there's a withholding tax of 15% of the profit that you make.
I thought withholding tax is 5 bob. So 5%, sorry.
That's on if you do services. But withholding tax on investment income is 15%.
15%.
So there's no standard withholding tax. It depends on who you are. Yeah. So if you're doing consultancy, for example,
yes,
when I pay you, I have a 5% withholding tax on the consulting fee that I pay you. But if you are investing, you'll get your capital back on the investment income. You will pay to the government 15% of the profits.
So I was just looking at 15% of 130,000. That is 19,500.
Yeah.
Pesa mingi sana napatia serikali.
We have to build roads. We have to do empowerment.
Okay, so now we understand what Cytonn Investments does, and I think it's a worthy venture, if you ask me. Sasa tuongee juu ya the state of economy from an investment perspective. You invest our monies. How is the state of our economy? Because if you ask someone like myself, I'll tell you our economy is really doing bad because, prices have gone up from fuel to coffee and so many other products. But I'm sure if I ask someone like yourself, maybe you'd have a different answer. So why don't you tell us how is the state of the economy from your perspective?
From my perspective. Of course, from my perspective, it's not really... I always say if you're an investment manager, you have no perspective. You read the data. So it's what the data says. Now, if you look at what the data says, there are two sides of the same coin. Now, and I'm sure you also listen to what our politicians are saying.
I don't trust them, but yes.
And depending on which politician, which side they are.
None. I trust none. But proceed.
I wonder why. So, there are those who will say the economy is doing well because of the data they are looking at. They'll say, look, the dollar used to be at 160. Now it's at 129. It has stabilized. Now, of course, the reality is the KK administration came in September 2022 when the dollar was at 120. Then it went to 160. It's come back to around 129. But the truth is it has stabilized at 129. So currency stability is one of the important things to look at. The other thing to look at is inflation. It used to be at around 9%. It's at around 4%. So it's been cut by half. Now, inflation essentially means without doing anything, if you're earning 100,000,
yes,
whatever you could have bought for 100,000 at the end of the year is going to cost 104. So the power of your money has gone down. You need more money to get the same thing. So when you bring inflation down, it is good for the ordinary mwananchi. So that has come down. The other place that people who say the economy is doing good are looking at is interest rates. If you look at the 1-year T-bill, and T-bill is really the name of the instrument the government uses to borrow money from the public for 1 year. It used to be as high as 16. Now it's gone to around 8%. Now, interest rates, when they are lower, it's good because it means you can be able to access money. So those three things that I've talked about, whether it's interest rate, whether it is currency, whether it interest rate and currency, there's a third one that I just mentioned. Generally speaking, you are talking about macros because they show you how the economy is doing. So from a macro perspective, the economy seems to be doing well, and it seems to be doing well because it could have been worse. There's one more thing that a bullet that we dodged. Default. You know, by the time the KK administration came in, there was an issue of can we even service our debt? And if a country defaults, it's a bad thing because we spend a whole 5 years trying to restructure. So it's good that we didn't default. So on that aspect, the economy seems to be doing well.
So we are not in the international CRB.
We are not in the international CRB, which is good.
Okay.
Why is it good?
It's good because if you're in the international, at least right now we can be engaging international community about lending, restructuring our loans. If you're in the CRB, you are talking about how do I get out of the CRB? And we didn't elect our treasury mandarins to negotiate how to get out of the CRB.
If we're in the CRB, what would happen?
If we're in the CRB, we would not be getting more loans. We would not be getting investors. Investors would be telling us, please get out of the CRB for me to give you money. IFC would be now negotiating how to get us out of the CRB.
And being in the CRB, apart from not having investors and not being able to borrow money, how would that impact the country, and what would this impact look like?
CT, it's just, I would put it as, it's an unnecessary distraction. The CS Treasury, the president, everybody around the economic advisor, so to speak, would be more focused on how do we get out of the CRB, as opposed to how do we put money in Kenyans' pockets. So it is just unnecessary distraction. Maybe to answer it, think about yourself when you're in a financial mess. You wake up every day saying, how do I evade this auction? How do I restructure my loan? You don't want to be there. You want to spend time saying, how do I pay this loan as the loan is performing? Restructuring a loan, even a personal loan, is very difficult because you're always engaging a bank in, please don't auction, give me more time. You are not running your life as normal. So it's a complete distraction.
You know, I asked the question, if you bring it down to a domestic situation, if, say, for instance, I have no income, which is what happens when I lose a job, I am sacked, or whatever entity I'm working for has collapsed, whatever. No, redundancy puts money in your pocket, theoretically. It does.
Yeah.
When that happens, there are many changes you make.
Yes.
If you have children who are in school, you have to look into it. If what the house you live in is rented, you have to consider all that. Meaning, there is a direct impact on your lifestyle, your life, and everything that you do. If you had loans that you needed to pay, in the absence of an income, you now have a problem repaying those loans. And with loans which are not being paid, you're now dealing with auctioneers. Meaning, everything around you begins to collapse. Now, the question I was asking is, when a nation defaults, what exactly happens to its citizenry?
I like your example of domestic income, because when you're in that situation where you've lost a job and you cannot pay, there's a point to come where you go and tell the bank, look, for my life to move forward, I will not pay. Can't pay, won't pay. You auction whatever you want, I start a new life. Now, the country was at a point where it could have said that. And going back to the question he was asking,
Yes.
it's going to go to a good place, because the question is the economy doing well or badly? If you are a country, you have one advantage, and that's what the country did. If you, as an individual, you can't say, now that I've been laid off, I don't have income, I'm going to tax people to get money. But a country can do that. So then what happened? Taxes went up. If you take somebody who makes 50,000, for example, they used to pay 200 on an NSSF. That has gone up 20 times. They pay 3,000. Tax rate across the board, the highest tax rate used to be 30%. It went to 35%. So when taxes go up, the country is able to collect a little bit more money. All these e-citizen collections, fuel levy, taxes went up across the board. So the country had a little bit of money where it could go and say, look, I can pay a few more years. So instead of defaulting, what we did, we said, we won't default. We are going to tax our citizens. And once we tax our citizens, even when you take the housing levy, we all know it's not all ending up in housing. A good chunk is packed in treasury bills. Essentially, it's a housing levy that you've been taxed. Some goes into housing, some is borrowed by the government, and it's borrowed by the government to pay debt. So when you take, and even NSSF, yes, I'm paying NSSF. If I'm making 50, my NSSF has jumped from 200 to 3,000, 15 times. That gives a lot of, causes a lot of strain on the individual. But where does the NSSF put money? It will put it in T-bills. What does it mean? Instead of defaulting, I'm going to be able to pay. So the domestic person might be forced to say, I'll default so that I start afresh. But the government was able to tax. And that is why now when you ask the citizen, they'll tell you the economy is not doing well. And it's true, because if you take SHA, you take NSSF, you take the housing levy, you take the increased taxation, the average Kenyan has lost about 6% of their income. So going back to your 100,000 example.
This is a 6% that minus now the other 30% that initially they used to give to the
Yes,
government.
I'm just saying, you used to make 100, and let's say 30% was gone, you are left with 70.
Yes.
Now, that 70, another 6,000
So
is
now
gone.
you have 64.
64.
Right.
Now, when you talk about 64, remember there's inflation. Even inflation moved from the 9 to now 4.
Okay.
So of the 64, inflation takes away 4%. So using your example, the
Right.
average Kenyan who was making 100,000 and
Yes.
was left with 70 on the table now has 60 on the table. That is why they'll sit and say, no, me, I'm not seeing this good economy you're talking about. Because and remember, if you take 10,000 shillings from somebody who was making 70, imagine all the rearrangements they have, because essentially you've taken 10,000 off the table.
Yes.
For somebody who was making 70,000. They have to cut somewhere. As they cut somewhere, of course they are going to be aggravated. They are going to say, look, I can no longer go out, or I can no longer pay my
Afford
fare.
this, yeah.
There's something they have to give up. And then that is now the foul mood. So you see the two worlds. The national economists saying, look, we are doing well, we didn't default, inflation is halfway, the shilling is stable, interest rates for T-bills have cut into half. That's the macro, it's well. But the micro, on the table, the guy says, you have taken my 10,000. And by the way, even after taking the 10,000, the road is not better. I don't go to better
Fuel
hospital.
prices have gone
Fuel
up.
prices have gone up.
Yes.
So where has the money gone? Of course, as Kenyan, you'll say, maybe you stole it. And that explains the good economy that the
Yes.
economists, the national economists are talking about.
Right.
The bad economy that the Kenyans are talking about. So how is the economy doing?
So-
Depends on who you ask.
So Edwin, what I'm hearing from you is that we're actually doing good. We're doing the right thing. The government, rather, not we, but the government is doing the right thing. It's just that Kenyans are not seeing it.
No,
and
I didn't say that. I didn't say they're doing the right thing.
the reason I'm
I
saying
said
this,
we dodged a bullet.
yes, the reason I'm saying this is because, and you've explained it very, for me, actually, umeisema venye sikuwa nimeiona. You've said, number one, we've paid our debt, we've not defaulted rather on our debt repayment. You have said that, inflation has gone down from, I think it was 9, you've said 4.8. Yes.
Interest rates from 16 to
right.
around 8.
Yes. So all those things you've mentioned, it looks like then we're actually bashing President Ruto for nothing, and we need to probably give him more time to actualize, for us to start now seeing the benefits of the economy performing in that perspective.
I see what you're doing there, trying to
No,
put me in a corner.
No. I'm
okay.
actually not putting you in a corner. I just want to understand it.
Let me now explain.
Yes.
We talked about, yes, the government has done the right things. Evaded default, cut interest rate, inflation is down. But the individual Kenyan who elected the government is saying, wait, you've, for lack of a better word, you've stolen my income. I'm making less. Especially the person at the bottom of the pyramid. Because remember how this government came into being was to say, we are going to lift the bottom up.
Yes.
Taking my income cannot possibly be lifting me up.
Yes.
It seems like it's more like top to bottom. Where the government could have done better, the moment you've dodged the bullet in terms of not defaulting, what do? You've taxed people. You quickly need to figure out how to now grow the economy, to grow income. You cannot grow an economy by taxing. That can't work. You grow an economy by reducing taxes, not increasing taxes. But you had to increase them to live another day. In investment, we always say, you always have to make sure that you can open the door to, and not just investment, anything, even what you are doing. Whatever you do, make sure tomorrow you can come back and run the show. So the problem is, after dodging the bullet, there has not been policies to grow the economy. So you've taken from my table. You've not made it easier for me to get a job. You've not made it easier in terms of the red tape for me to register a business. So if we are not growing the economy, people are going to grumble. But you don't grow economy by giving people, staff to go start a business, smoky trolleys. We already have enough of that.
Pasua.
Yeah. So where the government needs to do better is to say, having dodged the bullet, having stabilized the macros, how do we then grow the economy? That means you have to cut corruption.
Yes.
Whatever money that is going into corruption, cut it so that you can translate it into reducing taxation. Things like cutting corruption could not have happened overnight. So the government had to tax to stabilize. Now that you've stabilized, start showing Kenyans, how do I then grow the economy? Cut corruption. One of our biggest areas is tourism. How do you get more tourists with more money to come in so that they bring foreign income? Registering a business, running a business.
Yeah.
Make it easier. I mean, we all know if you're running a business in Nairobi, the amount of facilitation that you'd have to do. Government has to say from today, no or very little facilitation. So make it very easy for people to run business. People want to borrow for their businesses. Today, if you want to borrow, you have to go to the bank. Bank will charge you almost 18%. Rates have moved from 16 to 8.
Yes.
Lending, if you go borrow, it's moved from 18 to around 15. How come it's not increasing? Because of bank dominance.
Yes.
If you go to a well-functioning economy, if you want to borrow, chances are 40% you'll go to the bank, 60% you'll go to capital markets. In Kenya, 99% banks. So what advantage do they have? So we need
99% goes to the banks.
99%. If you want to borrow,
yes,
the chances you can go to the capital markets and borrow from capital markets is only 1%. 99% you'll have to borrow from banks. So banks are essentially a monopoly in lending.
And that's a bad thing.
And that's why they don't have to reduce their rates, because you have nowhere else to go.
You've mentioned businesses and the environment for conducting business. We have seen in recent months companies declaring redundancies and having to let go of staff members. So now, how can the government come in to help companies, avoid that particular process? Because if a company decides to reduce their staff by 100 or plus. Those are 100 people who've joined the unemployment market, which actually is not a market, but they have joined it nonetheless. So now what happens? How can the government come in to help? Can for example, if today Radio Generation had wanted to do redundancies, can we go to the government and tell them, look, bala tufute mbuvi na city tuongezee ama tufanyie kitu fulani so that now that cannot happen? Is there a formula for that?
There's a formula. It's not a direct formula where you can go as Radio Generation and say, okay, sitaki kufuta mbuvi, sitaki kufuta CT, can you give me some cash? Because government has to tax to have that cash. What they can do is to ask themselves, what amount of money can we keep at Radio Generation? Do we have to tax mbuvi's 1.5% and the other person 1.5%? 3% to the housing levy. Can we do 0.5, 0.5?
They can actually do that.
They can. I mean, the housing is not an emergency. I mean, people are not sleeping outside.
No, because essentially what
some are.
Some are city. But let me ask you a question.
Yes.
The person who's sleeping outside, is shelter the number one issue? And do you solve it by giving them a house or giving them a job for them to get their own house?
Their number one priority would actually be food.
Be food.
Sustenance.
Okay. And if you want to give them food, you can give them food today. Can you give them food for the rest of their lives? I think you have to give them a job. And for those who got a house, remember that Kibera project? Did they stay there? We all know they rented it. So all I'm saying is, don't tax Radio Generation, a tax that you can forgo. Let that money go into paying people.
Now that's what we would call tax exemption for a particular period, of course. Sasa, for the rest of your existence as Radio Generation, you guys will not be taxed. But they can actually say, for this financial year, until you guys get back on your feet, no taxation.
Keep taxes low. There's no need for taxes to be at 30%. Well, it can be at 20%.
Let me ask this question. Are we saying that in the absence of this taxation or the increased taxation, we would not have been able to meet our obligations, including the repayment of debts?
For 2022, 2023, for sure, because the things you need to do, like cut corruption, you can't do overnight.
Okay. You've mentioned
wastage of government money.
Okay. What percentage of our revenue would you say we lose to corruption? If you have the figures. And
I'm not sure I have the figure.
And you know I'm going with this.
I'm not sure I have the figure, but the most popular one is the one Uhuru said.
The 2 billion.
2 billion a day.
Ethics and Anti-Corruption actually confirmed it. They came up with 1.9 something billion, which is 2 billion. Now, if we're losing 2 billion shillings daily, in a year, how many billions have we lost?
That's 360 times 2, or 720 almost.
That's 720 going to a trillion. That is what we lose. If we were to go with those figures, indeed, it is a colossal loss. And that alone would be able to help us repay our debts without too much of a fuss.
Absolutely.
Which then takes me back to my question. It therefore implies that what we collect in terms of our revenue is actually enough to meet our needs.
CT, you are correct. The reason why I was not going that route and to say, look, we could actually not, because what you're saying is absolutely true. If we cut corruption and wastage spending, we would not need to increase taxes. However, that is not possible for one reason, and you cannot blame the government. If you want a government that is not corrupt, you must go to the ballot box and make that decision. Question is, when we go to the ballot box as Kenyans, is that our number one? Who is the least corrupt? It seems to be, when we go to the ballot box, we ask ourselves, who is my tribe or tribal affiliation? Until citizens make that choice and say, I don't want corruption, government will continue to be corrupt. As David Dande said, we will probably leave it as corrupt as we found it, if not worse. It is the choice that we have made. How we change that is what I don't know, because citizens kind of believe government can wake up and change. No, but those are the people you elected.
But I think even the framing of the answer doesn't quite get to the heart of the matter, because the problem isn't corruption.
The problem is
Impunity.
But impunity and corruption are one and the same thing.
No, they are not. One is a manifestation of the other.
Okay.
When you know you can get away with murder, you will murder. If you know you can't get away with it, you will be very hesitant.
so you're saying impunity gave birth to corruption?
It does, because people do things. Nobody does something in order to get caught. Because our laws are against this corruption, that's why we talk about it. But the knowledge that if you have certain affiliations and you're a certain position and politically you are aligned in a certain direction, nothing, if not very little, will happen to you.
Yeah.
Then it opens that door wide.
Wide.
People know that I can do this and there will be no undue repercussions on me.
Okay.
So the problem is not the symptom. The symptom, this corruption thing we keep talking about, it is the impunity. Because, and somehow in this country it seems transferable. Because
It's contagious.
it's like it's like a viral infection. It's airborne.
I agree with you one way or another, but
Yes.
but for me it still goes back to the citizen, because even this impunity, if today somebody is held by EACC to be held to account, one of the first things you will hear are their tribes people coming and saying, you are finishing one of us, right? And why would these people be able to come and say you are finishing one of our tribesmen? Because behind these politicians are real people who can actually come out on the street. So impunity and corruption for me are one and the same thing. I'll give you a good example. We've talked about NSSF deduction from 200 to 3,000. Has anybody seen their statement? A single citizen?
I don't know. When, I mean, NSSF were not known to give you monthly statements on your...
Yeah, but at 200, I think you wrote it off as money gone. If you take somebody who makes 50,000, 3,000 times 12, that's 48. 1 month of income is gone to NSSF. Shouldn't we at least say, fine, send me a statement to see that the 3,000 you deducted from me actually made it to NSSF? Because this is supposed to be your pension money, and it has grown, even if it's by 10% or 5%, or even if it's not grown. There is no accountability. So impunity actually even resides in the heart of the citizen themselves, because here's a good example. We have not sat up and demanded that now that you have, you know, when you say triple,
Yes.
quadruple is a big number. I was trying to find the term for 15 times. It's not
Quadruple,
something,
triple, quadruple.
it's not something that's done often, so there's no even word for it. So you have to say 15 times. Now that you have increased our deduction 15 times, at least send us a statement. Let us see, because this is money that you've taken 1 month of my income out of 12 months. That is huge. This is money that I should get for retirement. So show me my statement, whether monthly at the end of the year, or tell me I won't get it.
Edwin,
but we are not demanding.
I actually agree with you, because the view I was putting across was going to end up with exactly that, accountability. Because as far as I'm concerned, the citizenry and the role that we play in holding leaders to account, or in not holding leaders to account, reflects directly on the problems we have. Because the impunity we speak of is as a result of someone knowing no one is going to hold me to account. And if there are people who complain, a small number who are statistically relevant. But if it was understood that that was the norm, and that they will be held to pay for the misdeeds that you have decided to involve yourself in as a public servant or as a politician, the numbers would decrease significantly. But here it's a growth industry where people vie to get into these positions so that they can do what they've seen others do. And then, in fact, we're having this discussion in the earlier hour. And then there's the Kenyan pretense that these are entrepreneurs. How do you claim to have money and yet there is nothing you can point to that has a value add that has given you the money? Nothing.
You don't sell onions, capsicum, nothing.
And Kenyans also don't value entrepreneurship, so to speak, because they won't ask you, but where did the money come from?
We don't even understand it, because remember, we do have people who are entrepreneurs, and we do have people who are business minded, and we do have people. The question
By people you mean Kenyans, citizens,
the-
or
some-
do you mean people in
Kenyan
leadership?
no, the subject matter here is Kenyans and Kenya.
No, but
Yes.
And Kenyan leaders.
do you mean the citizens or people in leadership?
The leadership, people in leadership
Okay.
are Kenyans. Okay?
Yes, but okay. Are you
The
asking?
leadership position, political leadership specifically,
Yes,
is seen as an entrepreneurial process.
that's the distinction I was looking.
Where when you get there, the doors are now open for you to pilfer. You will call it something else. And that is why you will find that capital projects are always at a premium. People want to build roads. They want to put up structures that nobody needs. Okay? The roads are good.
They want to build markets,
Yes.
industrial parks,
Now,
houses.
exactly. You have these huge projects that involve building, and that involves expenditure, huge expenditure. The follow through, which you expect, is what should have preceded the building. Because it's like someone wanting to start a business and starts by opening an office. Should you not have business that demands that you have an office
That you have
to
an
conduct
office.
it?
We have it upside down, no question about it. And if we wanted to fix it, we always talk about Singapore. Let's look at what Singapore did. That could be the solution. Anyway, you asked.
But Edwin, you've touched on Singapore before you get to your point. Don't lose the thought. What is it about Singapore that we see that makes us give the example all the time? What is it about them?
It is a way for us to be blunt. If we wanted to do Singapore, we would do Singapore. And Singapore started by, I want clean people, I want competent people, I want ethnic harmony. They started with the software. And then after that, then they said, now let us deduct taxes to build houses. They started with the foundation is actually software. I think we use Singapore here as an excuse for these capital projects. Singapore built, therefore let us
They didn't
build.
start with building.
Yeah, but they didn't start with building. That's what I'm saying. They started with culture. But we don't want culture. And also we invoke Singapore when we want. I've not heard anybody say, look, let's do economic empowerment the way Singapore did. Singapore didn't do an economic empowerment by bringing people and giving them stuff. So it's almost
By stuff
like,
you mean like giving them piki, the
Yeah.
trolleys for their smoky pasua?
no, they didn't do that.
Okay.
So we use Singapore when it's convenient. It's actually not a genuine
See, for me,
example.
the Singapore example, which I like, what you're saying is what was manifest, but the leader who is quoted and mentioned, Lee, wasn't alone. He had a group of people who shared that vision completely.
But he shaped the vision and chose the people.
No, the vision, any vision starts with the idea that you have. The shaping and creation to the point where it now becomes alive and kicking and walking and running, usually there are other people who have to support it. Otherwise, it doesn't do that, and neither does it get implemented. One individual comes up as the leader of the group, first among equals, but you have a support system. To understand it, look at how Kibaki brought people who had been in retirement back into government. He had a support system, so he knew he could carry what he wanted because that support system existed. Right?
So are you suggesting we don't have enough Kenyans to carry the vision that we want?
No, right
Because the vision
now,
we want is there.
the people who are in power right now and the structure of those who support them, they have to explain what vision they have and how they
But
plan
now you
to
see, and that's the
implement
thing, and I will go back to what he said a couple of sentences ago. It boils down to who we choose at the ballot. No, it does. City Skiza.
it. No, it
Skiza
does
City.
not.
It does.
It does not.
So how
So
will
then how do we get those leaders
Yeah, how do
into
we get those leaders
positions
if we
of
don't choose them?
influence?
The leaders who are elected based on what we think they can do, what we've seen them do. In this election, this one was unique and completely different from any other election we've had. This election, whether we like it or not, was actually about issues. Hustler dynasty issue. The promises followed.
it also the bottom up, the economic structures that we were promised and so on and so
yes,
forth.
exactly. Exactly. They went overboard. They even, the social contract we talk of, which is usually the promise, they documented it, signed, charter, nini.
47 counties signed.
Meaning, these fellows went about this process of campaigning in a way that we haven't campaigned before. And that is why...
City, I would beg to differ, but you finish first, then I tell you why I think
I'd like you to differ immediately, if you don't mind.
You are confusing sloganeering, and you call it a promise. If you really want to elect people, you need to take the slogans and the promises and tie them to track record. When we make investments and investment managers, people come to us with slogans and promises. This is my business, this is what I want to do. You take a step back and ask, this entrepreneur called Mbuvi or CT, let me go back and study their track record in doing these things that they are promising they will do. If you look at, and that's why I think this election, the past election was no different from the rest, there was no credible correlation between promises and track record. When you are going to the booth to elect, it's a serious business. I am doing an election against a contest of promises made by groups of people. Can I test a correlation between these promises and these individuals? In my view, these were slogans. There was no difference between the dynasties and the hustlers as far as their track records were concerned. The slogans were there, but track record was the same.
Edwin, when have we ever had a presidential candidate bring in the discussion of dynasties and hustlers?
You've not had. That's just to me. That's just a campaign tactic. You will have the yes. Next.
Are you telling me that sloganeering, as you call it, didn't have the desired effect?
It had the desired effect. For sure, it did. That's why the people are disillusioned.
All right. No, the disillusionment is not about the sloganeering. When you have something that people have not seen before and they vote on it, and they then do not see the outcome you promised, the expectations will mirror the disappointment in reverse. There were high expectations, the disappointment will be great. Yes, because disappointment is a fact of expectations. So, and when that happens, then you see and you hear. But the expectations were based on what was said. Politicians sloganeer, it's a tool they all use.
I agree.
All.
But there has to be a track record between the slogan. There has to be a correlation between the slogan and the track record. To me, that's what is missing.
Let me ask you a simple question. When you're electing a president, what are these track records that we're going to be looking for?
You want to look at track record. I mean, let me turn it around. What are the pain points for Kenyans? We talked about corruption. So, if you really want to get rid of corruption, you have to look at the track record for the candidate and the people around him in terms of corruption. You want
and
reduce wastage.
And we're saying that when we vote, we don't do this.
We don't.
I don't think we do.
We don't.
So what do we vote for then? Since we vote, what are the values that we look at when we vote?
I don't think we look at values. I think we're looking at a tribal calculus.
We vote.
Actually, yes and no, because Edwin, you cannot win a presidential election with your tribe's vote only. That can't happen.
No, that's why I said tribal calculus, not your only. That means you have to put in a coalition founded not on values, not on the pain points, but a coalition based on tribal mathematics. Unless we fix that,
tribal mathematics won't go away. It doesn't matter what you fix.
But it shouldn't be the only.
You see, this is my point. What we're doing here is the easy part, talking about what should happen and what shouldn't happen. Every generational change offers an opportunity for very fundamental changes. If you look at even the so-called struggle for independence, you will realize that there was a generational change. There are people who previously had wanted that freedom but didn't have the education or the exposure that a certain generation then had, and when they had it, they had the know-how to say, no, we don't want to put up with this. Those who fought physically were young people. It's young people who tend to fight, not old people. When we talk about the second liberation, terms like the Young Turks
Yes.
and so forth came into being. A younger generation now was talking about the changes that they wanted. Brought us and gave birth to the new constitution, brought back multipartyism. A generational change made it possible. That generation that brought it about are now old.
Let's continue. I want to hear where you
We
lead.
now see a younger generation who are doing the thing that I actually want to talk about. They are talking about accountability.
And good governance.
And they're saying this is what it is. The issue of who we elect, I'm in agreement, because I often wonder, when you look at track record, someone like, say, Kivuta Kibwana should have been an ideal presidential candidate, or the governor of Muranga. Those are people who have clear track records. I mean, you can say all you like, but they have a track record you can see. They have the mind and they have the ability to actually do things which benefit their citizens.
But haven't you heard people make comments like, okay, this guy, he doesn't have enough money. You know, this guy is not thuggish enough.
I
He's
understand
not-
all that. I understand all that. The point I'm trying to make is this. What we say in a studio like this regarding what we should do is precisely that, what we say here. We don't have a population who are ready to play their part and to hold themselves to account and then hold leaders to account. We enjoy the corruption we have. We like it. We only wait for our turn to be in a position where we can be
But
equally
isn't that what I was saying? It's the citizen.
Yes.
But it is changing slowly. The way you're saying, the generation has to ask for it. Did you see that young man who stood up in Kakamega and asked the president a question? Did you see that clip?
What was the
No, I
question?
haven't seen the clip.
It was a young man from Osingishu, and essentially he actually stood up and said, Mr. President, if you want to be elected, you must confront the real issues, such as the economy. You cannot be going with this sloganeering, what people around you are telling you. The point I'm trying to make is, it was not usual in Kenya for a young person to stand up and ask a direct question of the president. I've also seen more and more police officers where Murkomen shows up, where the IG shows up, they wake up and say, what is this independence you guys are talking about? When I'm doing my job and somebody doesn't like what I'm doing, I get transferred. So I am seeing more and more accountability. Social media, the reason why I think the powers that be don't like it is that it's a forum for accountability, and these things actually get under their skin. That's why they wake up and talk about, we are all human. If something gets to you, we shall see. So accountability is improving city, but not as much as the citizens seem to want. If you want to cut corruption, the same way we say there's corruption, there's wastage, people are flying all over the place, getting allowances. It's almost like public services pursuit for DSA. DSA is daily subsistence allowance. This money is being taxed from you and I. So the citizen is impatient. But this
How
impatience,
impatient, really?
that's what I'm saying. They're not as impatient because when they go to the ballot, you don't see the scrutiny that they ought to do in terms of accountability. So you and I are saying the same thing.
No, we are not. Does it begin at the ballot? We're not really saying the same thing.
At the ballot is where the decision is made.
Yeah.
It is, but what precedes the ballot?
Campaigns?
Not just campaigns. We're talking about the citizens here. What do they do? In the last election, I saw something I'd never seen before. There were groups of people in certain constituencies who had formed themselves into committees where any candidate who wished to present themselves as an MP or an MCA, they would call you. And they would ask you, the accountability and the track record that you speak of. And they would question. Now, if that is what happens, and we've moved away from what we consider to be the normal way in which we do things, I would argue that what Edwin is saying has been seen even in elections, where you think that things ought to go in a certain way because of the precedents that we've seen over time. For instance, in Luo Nyanza, it is assumed if you're not on ODM, you will not be elected. There are people who've been elected on tickets that are independent, and they've continued to be elected.
Exactly.
And they have won against ODM candidates. So what I'm saying is, your point is a valid one in that people have understood what they feel is in their interest and the person who has their interest at heart. The evolutionary process that I'm speaking about is not piecemeal, because the example I'm giving is piecemeal. I'm saying a decision where the accountability factor doesn't start at and end at the ballot. It starts now. So that in time, as you go to the ballot, you've already seen people who are willing to be held accountable and those who are not willing to be held accountable. It is not a difficult process to determine. There are people who cannot stand an alternate view. I'm not even saying criticism.
Alternate view.
Just a different view.
Just a different view. They find it something that they cannot accommodate. I am saying, if that process doesn't begin early and people get into the mode of it, the Gen Zs gave us a good opening to do that. They were questioning and they were raising issues and saying, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this. And what else we also saw, the government actually does listen.
Yeah.
So they do listen.
They do listen.
I'll actually go back to something that Professor Lumumba said here on Monday. He was talking about Kenyans are not necessarily, the larger population is not civically aware. And I think it's what you're also alluding to. Because, yes, we will see that tunaumia, we'll see the leaders, stealing all these monies. Then there's the Mutuwetu syndrome, and we can see it very clearly. But when it comes down to that one decision that can actually save us, that one shot or a silver bullet, if you want to call it, we actually don't use it. Because when we get to the ballot, we now go back to our tribal cocoons. Right now, I hope this won't happen in 2027. We are seeing a lot of tribeless, partyless, fearless, and all that sloganeering we're talking about. I just hope we shall be able to translate it come election day in 2027. Perhaps you can tell us also if you're seeing that even in market trends, perhaps, and investment trends, and how people are just thinking about spending and investing their monies.
Now, when it comes to investment, that's one place where I think people make rational decisions. I don't think when you look at investment firms, your clients reflect the tribes of the founders or the promoters. So at the individual level, my money, people will make rational decisions.
Yeah.
What I'm still puzzled about, if even those cities saying we're on different tables, or we are saying different things.
Yes.
Accountability at the ballot will not start on that day. It will have to reflect what the citizen has been thinking, their own values. The citizen is rational with their own cash. When you go and are comparing prices, you are not like, oh, I'll buy from you because you're from my tribe. You look at value for money, the quality, and you make that decision. I think we are at a better place because even though we talk about all these frustrations, Kenya has improved based on that constitution you are talking about. There used to be a time when you can be picked, locked, and people know you are locked at this place and you don't have to go to court. Now it's in the hearts and minds of every Kenyan, regardless of tribe, that it's not right to pick somebody and not produce them in court. So much so that when then people want to do what Moi used to do, then they'll do extrajudicial, they'll do abductions.
Yeah.
But the country has evolved. We're in a better place than we used to be 20 years ago. I think we'll be in a better place 10 years from now. My issue is the pace does not reflect the frustration and the hunger that the average Kenyan wants. I agree there might be there are many who are not civically educated, but I think with internet, with campaigns, with discussions, more and more are getting educated. The solution is going to be, in my view, the citizen to make a choice that reflects a solution to their pain point. How they do that, I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
But for me, that is the gap. The choice has to reflect somebody who will genuinely address your pain points. I don't think that we have done that. Will we do it in 2027? I don't know.
Because that will be the culmination of whatever it is that we're discussing here.
What, 2027?
Election day, 2027, yes.
No, it's not election day. It is whether those who represent the majority of our population will actually get IDs and will actually go and vote.
But that's part of
which
it.
will translate now to election day. Hizi vitu zote tunasema, whether we will become, we'll have that civil awareness, whether we shall be politically aware and mature, whether we shall get our IDs, whether we shall actually wake up on election day queue in the lines and actually vote. That this entire process.
You see, the reason I'm going granular on this issue, those who voted know they go and vote. It is what we are voting for that we're discussing here, because it has a direct relationship to the economy and everything we're talking about. This large population of people that we speak of, who are predominantly youthful, if they had jobs, or if they had businesses,
right,
or if they were earning an income, this revenue we keep speaking of would be much higher, because there'd be more people whom you can tax. Now, the opportunity to enable these people to do this thing we're saying is what we don't see moving. So the discussion towards the ballot must be in greater abundance than the ballot itself.
We agree, City, because we are taking it for granted that these people see the self-interest enough to actually go and register now, to actually do their own. You can't educate people before you educate yourself and really understand why are we stuck here. Why that individual then is not taking IDs. Those are the things that then puzzle me, because then we should be taking IDs with a sense of urgency. We should be educating ourselves with a sense of urgency and educating each other. There's this thing I keep seeing, Syrian in numbers. But Syrian is not numbers just at demonstration or at the ballot. It is in numbers, conversations. Mbuvi, make sure you take an ID, make sure you talk to people to take an ID, and also talk people out of tribal cocoons.
Yes.
We have to look at who is going to attack corruption, who is going to attack wastage, who is going to give education. That's the conversation that people have to, and I agree, it has to be at granular level. But ultimately, at the ballot, if we don't make that choice that deals with corruption, that deals with true job creation is not handing equipments to people. Job creation is creating an enabling environment where people who can create businesses will create them and then employ people.
Clearly kitu ya kupeana pikipiki imekusumbua, but we shall talk about it.
It actually ensures that you stay in that position that you are in, instead of thinking of how you can actually get that pikipiki yourself. And I agree, it's that whole issue of teach someone to fish, teach them how to make their own income so that they do not have to come back every single day and get handouts. Folks have got some very interesting insights, by the way, as far as our economy is concerned. There's a gentleman here, he goes by the name of Adrian Terry. So Adrian anasema hivi: there must be an entity in deficit for another to be in surplus. If the Kenyan government is to be in surplus, private sector will have to be in deficit. Edwin, maybe you can enlighten me on that one. Is it true?
No, it's not true. I mean, I what's it called? A rising tide.
It is not true at all. In fact,
lifts all boats. It's not true at all, because first of all, the role of government, and we have different views here. For me, I believe in limited government. Let government do only that which I cannot do. So I cannot build my own road, Mbuvi's own road, City's own road. We need one road.
Yes.
Tax doesn't build that road. One of the biggest problems in Nairobi is sewer. 50%. I mean, to put it crudely, when you use a loo, 50% chance is that it's ending up in a river, because only 50% of Nairobi has working sewer. So you can't build your own sewer. So let government be strictly limited to enabling environment for me to do my business and things that I cannot do for myself. And even sewer, they can still enable a sewer company to do it. It doesn't have to be them, because if it's a project that involves government, it's going to have a lot of expense and corruption. So we should look at government as enabling private citizens to thrive, private businesses to thrive. We are not in competition with government. They should just take enough to enable us. So that idea that one is in surplus, deficit, the concept doesn't even exist in my mind.
All right. Then there's the one I read early on. Langat Msemokweli says, oh my goodness, imepotea, I hope not. Oh yeah. Even if we lowered interest rates to 2%, no business will thrive in Kenya. Why? Businesses thrive where citizens have disposable income. Today, Kenyans have almost zero disposable income.
I think Langat is right. Remember, I said for somebody who is making 100,000, paying 30% tax, they are left with 70 before this administration. And now they are giving up another 10. So they are left with 60. even if you lowered interest rate, and yes, they've been lowered. They've come from 16 to
13,
8
I think. Is it 8? Okay.
Yeah, 16 to 8.
So by half,
By
actually.
half.
Okay.
But somehow Kenyans are not borrowing. They want to borrow, even to spend, but banks are not lending to them. Why are banks not lending? Because people can't pay. It's easier to just lend to government, even at the 8%, than lend to an individual at 15%, because the individual won't pay. So what he's saying is true, and that's why you have to focus on enabling the individual to get a job and an income so that they can spend.
Actually, there was a headline sometime last week, if not the week before. And the headline was about that the banks have lent too much to Gava, such that there's very little remaining for citizens. Is that something that you can confirm, perhaps?
The truth is, yes, banks are lending to government. I mean, if you look at the two banks that have reported so far for first half of 2025, Stanbic increase in lending to government was 40%. Lending to individuals reduced by 2%. That's a delta of 42. Equity just reported, I think yesterday, increase in lending to government 20%, to individual 4%. So banks obviously prefer to lend to government, and not because they are bad people. They're in the business of making money. How do I lend to you if you can't pay? What Langati is saying is true.
They have obligations to pay their depositors as well.
And dividends to shareholders.
So remember, it's a business. And governments are safer until they're not.
So we have to solve the issue of the individual at the dinner table, and there we've taken income out. So how is the economy doing well?
There is also the question that always comes up with, well, it comes as a question and an answer at the same time. How do you ensure that there is more liquidity within the economy?
There is no one single silver bullet. It's a couple of things. Number one, the first thing is reduce taxation. This is a big issue, City. When you're taking 30% of somebody's income, they will only allow you to take it when they have no option.
Or when they feel they have a surplus. So that 30% isn't that big an issue.
Even if I have a surplus. do you know the number of people who are going to employers and saying, I don't want to be an employee, I want to be a consultant? Because when I look at the taxes, there are so many. So number one, we have to reduce taxation to a point where people are happy to pay and give them value for what they are paying.
Edwin, what you say is correct theoretically. It's very correct. The 30% and the problem that it creates is not only because it is a huge chunk of your salary being taken away. That's not really it. You're right when you say that there's always a multiplicity of factors that present in a situation. The fact that that 30% doesn't represent in your mind what you consider to be the requisite services you should be receiving is part of the problem. It's a bigger problem.
Absolutely.
If 30% was taken and you could walk into hospital without a problem, you really wouldn't kick a fuss about the 30%.
That's why some Europeans are happy to pay even 40, 50%.
Yes, they are, even 55. They don't mind. True, beyond a certain income, because you are guaranteed certain things. And those guarantees, for instance, like free education, as it has been pointed out here, it means when it's free, the money that you're paying is now yours.
Yeah, it's yours.
So you can
whatever you get, you can count on.
You can count, and there are things you can do with it. So given the multiplicity of factors that involve this, see, when one talks about an economy and one talks about its growth and one talks about the slowing down of its growth, or one talks about the increase in growth, these are determined by certain economic indicators. But it makes no sense whatsoever to the citizenry, as you've pointed out, if I am feeling I'm affording less and less and less of what I'm used to affording. And that is the situation we find now. But that is also accompanied by businesses closing shop, which means people out of jobs.
But businesses are not closing because they want to close.
No.
They end up saying this doesn't make sense.
It stops making sense, so you close shop. So the income that the government got from that particular business is also gone.
And if I may add, as I said, there's no silver bullet. You have to reduce taxes, you have to reduce corruption. Businesses should not close. There's something Mbuvi had asked, is there a place you can go at the government and say, I'm about to close, can you help me?
Yes.
They won't give you money, but they created a whole branch of government and a whole act called the Insolvency Act, where a business that is struggling but believes, if you give me a little bit of time, you hold my debtors back, I restructure, I can then be able to go through this rough patch. Like if I had to give a good example, Nakumat should have been able to enter insolvency through the office of the official receiver, tell tenants, landlords, I'm a tenant, but I'm struggling, give me a little bit of time. You find that even departments that are supposed to help struggling businesses have never turned around one single business in the entire 10 years of the Insolvency Act. So the people who are supposed to help businesses are the ones who are sinking them, selling them to their friends and family at cheap prices so that they gain. So the whole society needs to be remade.
I see why you're stuck on that corruption thing. I see. No. I'm saying I see. I had not looked at that angle. If I was a businessman, it's a painful thing.
Of course it is.
Because the process of building a business is difficult. The process of building a business so that it's actually functional is really difficult. The process of doing all this and even making money, that is really, 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 really difficult. So when you come across headwinds and you know that you're supposed to receive assistance and you don't, and you can see that you could have, but somebody chose the option of tearing down this business and ensuring that their friends benefit. It is for that reason that in banking there's something called the Daplam law that was brought in. Previously, my friend, you owe the bank, you have a house. My friend, they could determine the value of that house at whatever they like and sell it to whoever they like. And that was because interest have been piled on and on and on and on until you even lost as to how much you actually owe.
Interest and charges and penalties.
Kill a kid too. And then now they multiply. Now, that law put a halt to it and said, Apana, there's a limit to what you can charge. And if what this person has paid has gone beyond whatever it is they borrowed, then you need to look at this matter in this way. So it halted that. Thank you for bringing that up. I had not seen that.
Did we have to lose Tuskies, Uchumi,
Nakumat,
and then we take all, and you've talked about hard to put together. Do you know, for Nakumat to put those locations, took them 30 years. You have to look at a site, you got a developer, they develop, you become an anchor tenant. When they ran into problems, we did nothing. And all they needed was maybe 2 years. Then we take all those locations, we give it to Kafua. Within a year, we start saying, Kafua has too much buying power. They are not paying suppliers the right amount. What kind of society are we?
We never had those complaints about Nakumat.
Yeah.
We didn't mean they knew what they were doing.
They were local, right? We've spent 30 years, and it's just not locations. We've educated these people through free primary education, the people who are working there. We take all that and we turn it to there's nothing wrong with foreign farms. We are an open market.
Yes.
But you should not disadvantage your local people by handing over your best locations and your best resources to now a foreign company. Now you complain that they have too much power.
And yet it is this business that have shut down that opened the eyes of these people. Because they could see, if this is the growth pattern, then clearly this is a viable business. Believe me, I myself was shocked.
Yes.
When I was doing some work in Uganda, Marara to be precise, and I found Nakumat there. I said, yeah. But they want a loan. KCB were there, equity. Now, you have to ask, in East and Central Africa, do we have East and Central African banks in Kenya?
None that I know of.
Precisely, we have West African banks. All I'm saying is that local business push that we clearly had developed, had it been given the support that other countries give their business entities, the powers we keep saying we are would have multiplied by now, would have been a much, much bigger economy than we actually are.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, someone brought in this whole issue of the Bretton Woods, system about IMF. Let me see if I can find it. It was talking about IMF and World Bank. Na akasema vitu mingi sana hapo hivyo. I'll look for it and then probably we shall ask it. But we seem to be causing up also, and we have been causing up to this particular institutions for a while now, getting monies from Akina IMF and World Bank. Do they actually, in honesty, help the economy of Kenya? There are some people who will say, "Apana, you see, they come and they give us conditions, and then at the end of the day, sisi ndio tunaumia." But I don't think our government is crazy going there, unless you can tell me otherwise.
We live in it's a global village.
Yes,
everything is interconnected. IMF, World Bank are almost like the bankers of last resort for countries.
Yes,
and they know it.
Yeah. So and the people behind them are also known.
Yes,
the owners of the influencers of those banks. So if I were to say, for example, in the US, it is not in the US's interest or the UK's interest for a country like Kenya to collapse. I mean, if the country is not working, it can become what is it called? A place for terrorists to thrive.
Yes.
And if you have a terrorist thriving, it threatens the global order. So it's in the interest of IMF and World Bank to make sure that when we run out of foreign currency, they can come in and give us foreign currency, but they are also not charitable entities.
Yes.
So they have to then say, for me to give you this money, then you have to raise more taxes, and raising more taxes means a higher tax rate on incomes. So we cannot blame IMF and World Bank because we are the ones who take ourselves there. When we
they don't come knocking.
It's like the same way when a bank knows you can borrow and pay. So of course they will knock, but you have to open the door.
Okay.
So they come knocking, but the choice is going to be ours. When we grow coffee and then we transport it raw and then we buy it back as Nescafe, can you blame IMF or World Bank for that? It's our own fault. We need to be able to add value and process our product. When African countries grow cocoa and then transport it raw and then get it back as chocolate, we extract minerals, transport it out raw, then we come back and buy diamond rings and all those kinds of things. So what we are saying about Kenya is almost like a microcosm of Africa. Africa needs to reawaken and say, we have the human capital, we have the natural resources. I mean, if you look at Kenya, a desert like Dubai, if they had what we have, all the water, wildlife, I mean, people just come, pay to look at a lion that neither you or I created. God just put it there for us. But even once they pay us, we don't know where that money goes. So I don't think I would blame IMF and World Bank.
Yeah,
that
they're
much.
In business. Yeah,
they're in business and interest, national interest for the key stakeholders of those institutions. Remember, the US and UK and the what I would call the developed world, their first responsibility is to their citizens. Only when the welfare of Kenya or Kenya being threatened would also threaten the welfare of their citizens, that's when they'll say, okay, I don't want you to collapse, I'll give you some money.
Right.
But it's up to and the success of the first world and the success of the third world are not mutually exclusive. Both of them can thrive. But if I was in the first world and you're able to sell to me your coffee raw, and I process it and sell it back to you for higher price, why wouldn't I do that? It's in my interest to do that. If I can extract your diamond, I come and add things to it, then sell it back to you. I can extract your cocoa, add things and sell chocolate back. I would do it. It is up to Kenya and African countries to say we can also process our own coffee.
But now, this guy Langata anasema but we restructured our debts by getting money from the same IMF and World Bank at a higher interest rate to pay loans with lower interest. We just sunk our country deeper and tied us to them forever. Now, when we talk about, just this multilateral finance institutions as a whole, we also have even here in Africa, we have like the Africa Development Bank, right? Which has got entities, from Nigeria and other places. If we are looking at, first of all, the reason why even IMF, akina World Bank, World Bank ilianza after the Second World War, and the idea was, just helping the countries develop. Then now we had the akina AFDB, whose their idea was to give African countries loans at even lower interest rates as opposed to what we're getting from IMF and World Bank. We still haven't actualized that dream as a continent. Now we have all these resources you're saying that we have and we own and we should be taking care of. Why aren't we able to do that with our very own home, let me call them home-based remedies like Akina Africa Development Bank?
We borrowed the euro. The answer, I'll use the Eurobond as an example.
Right.
We borrowed the Eurobond for 6 billion. I mean, for around 6%. I don't know if it was $1 billion or 1.5, but let's for illustrative purposes, let's say we borrowed $1 billion for 6%. When you borrow, typically you're going to put it into something that returns more than your cost, right? So had we taken the money at 6% and gone and done something with it, like a road, which then economically returns, let's say 12%, when it's time to pay, first of all, that road, the economic activity we deployed the 1 billion to, would be able to pay. So where did the money go? Such that when it was due, we didn't have it. And when you don't have it, you go look for who else could give me $1 billion because my loan is due. It just happens that you would have to go back to the global markets. $1 billion is not easy to get.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go back to the same IMF, you'd have to go back to the same World Bank, you'd have to go back to the same global banks where writing a check, if you're talking about a JP Morgan and Stanchart in New York, $1 billion is nothing. They write the check very, very quickly if they know that it can be
paid back.
It can be paid back. I'm sounding like a broken, is it track record? But a broken record. But the problem is still us. Where did the billion shilling? Langat is asking where to refinance. So in that case, why is IMF or AFDB or whatever a problem? The problem remains us. We should have deployed the money in a place, and if we didn't have a place to deploy, we shouldn't have borrowed in the first place.
What you say is correct. The problem is not the money they give us, it's what was referred to as conditionalities that accompany the money. And it is called austerity. This is something I've always wanted to understand. How taxation helps with the growth of an economy. We're already distressed, and you're asking us to distress ourselves further because that's what more taxes do. How will this economy grow? That nexus is what I usually want explained, because it can't happen. So my view on this subject is this voodoo nonsense that these people keep telling us about how it is that austerity will help us is utter and absolute hogwash. Nonsense.
City, are you suggesting, because there are people who say that let the grass burn and it will grow again. Are you suggesting we should have just defaulted?
Actually, it wouldn't have been a bad thing, because one, we would then be forced to face our demons head on. It would be one of the most painful things we would have ever gone through.
Painful than this?
This is nothing.
That would have been, and remember,
this is nothing.
Then I don't want it.
There's a chance.
This is nothing.
That we have just kicked the can down the road.
Not a chance. We have. Edwin, we have. No, because we borrow and we keep borrowing, and we borrow and we keep borrowing. We are juggling.
But if we did that thing you are saying, if we now decided, let's cut corruption. You can never say no corruption. Human beings by nature, we are evil until the system stops us. So if we just say today, we are going to cut corruption, instead of 2 billion a day, we are going to allow only 500.
Actually, the argument that you propose is not, well, I wouldn't think in that manner. And when I say we should have defaulted, I'm speaking hypothetically, right? We could have solved the problem without defaulting. We could have looked at this issue differently. Now, there are those who say the idea of the odious debt and the discussion around this is far-fetched. It is not. It is not, because every time we look at monies we've borrowed, Euro bond 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, and where the money went, and money that never ended up, if it went to the consolidated fund, we know it has arrived. Those monies are in abundance and those monies are being paid. So when you ask the question, this debt, because the debt issue is what's killing us. It's not that the 2.5 trillion that we raise is not enough. It's the debt thing that is killing us.
The issue, CT, this odious debt discussion, and I'm in the group that you don't like, who say it is not a discussion that will go anywhere. You already owe the money. Now, by the time you go through this audit and say it was odious or not, the people who lent to you will have called in the default, and where they have collateral, any government, the embassies, the planes, they'll go and impound them.
You know something?
You will be in default by the time.
Actually, that argument that you have is precisely that, an argument that you have and a position that you've taken. I have also a position that I've taken on this particular subject. I don't need 3 examples of countries that have raised this issue successfully. I just need one. Then I have a precedent. And there's more than one.
But they raise it on one. There's one, I forget the name. The one that raised it, the tuna, who took money to go expand their tuna, whatever capabilities. The name will come. I think it's Mozambique.
Yes.
And they raised and said this money never came. And I think it was Credit Suisse that had underwritten this money, and that debt was, I think, wiped off. But they were raising on a specific debt. So if we are going to be able to say this money never came, and even the borrowing, and by the way, the person who lent to us was also, because in this case of Credit Suisse, they were also colluding with government officials. So they are also culpable. If we can take it debt by debt, for sure. But you see, the way the odious debt discussion is being tabled by and people I respect, somebody like Omkia, it is generic. We have debt to GDP is at 70%. It should be 50. I'm not sure we owe this. But if you are to particularize and say debt number A, it never came. It was lent by so and so, and they were in collusion with the treasury officials here, then that debt will be challenged internationally.
But then you see, you have gone and won the argument for me, because you've actually presented a case that shows that you actually can litigate.
You can.
Odious
Mozambique
debt.
did it for the tuna bonds.
My friend,
just Google tuna bonds Mozambique.
Yes. They, I'm raising this issue for a simple reason. Okay? Omtata speaks, but Jimmy Wanjigi has shouted about this longer and louder than even Omtata. I'm raising it because we are discussing what it is that ails our economy, and everything that could possibly contribute to that ailing must be looked at. If you have the burden of a debt that was intended for development, because that's what we borrow for, and that development never came and nothing was done, the money didn't even, if the money got to the consolidated fund, it came in. Different discussion. Didn't even. And the beauty of our system is that it's recorded. It's not as though I have to guess.
But we have to prove that the lender and the borrower colluded to defraud the Kenyan citizens.
Believe me, the discussion you are having is now the details of how such a case goes forward. I am raising the issue of monies that we are paying for that we did not benefit from. So you have a burden that you don't need to have. So we look at the pain point, you have to ask, let's go into details. Let me start again. What was borrowed on our behalf and didn't actually... Then you go into the details that you're speaking of. But it exists. Money was borrowed that the country did not benefit. Because it was borrowed on behalf of the country. We did not benefit from it. Simple fact. So if we're talking about debt, that discussion has to be brought in. It may be theoretical, it may be spurious, but it has to come in. Just like the demands by IMF and all these fellows regarding austerity must be brought in, because it is utter and absolute Nonsense.
CT, you are correct. The question then is, and I go back to the concept you don't seem to like, you'll have to go to the ballot box and elect people who are going to sit and say, I will do an audit of all our debts and particularize in the context of the Mozambique tuna bond scandal. If I can prove that the money that was borrowed and the lender and the borrower, because the key here is the lender must have been in on the fraud. If the lender genuinely gave money, did not wire, because they have no obligation to wire. These consolidated funds, those are your Kenyan laws. They are not US laws.
They're not international laws. They're not the laws that the lender subscribes to.
Exactly. But international laws do not allow fraud as part of international finance. So if you can prove that the bank that underwrote this Eurobond, whichever Eurobond that you are calling odious, was actually, when they wired it to wherever they were wiring it, they knew, just like the tuna bond scandal, that they would get some of it. It would never be used for what it was going to be claimed to be used in the offering memorandum. Then you can attack that debt. But nobody has taken the steps to actually do that. They're just saying, this money never arrived, therefore it's odious debt, we shouldn't pay. That generic argument won't fly in international finance.
No, it hasn't. The moment we structure a case and we put across a petition, then we can go with the argument you're proposing. I was merely looking at areas within our economy where monies have been borrowed specifically. And because of this borrowing, we now have some serious pains because of this borrowing. And I'm seeing us borrowing more. Okay? If it is true that in the 2 years, this is 2.5 years that the government has been in, that they borrowed close to 2 trillion, I don't know whether it's true or not. It means it has piled on to the debt that we already have. So it raises the question not just of the debt, but the repayment. How is it that this country has debts that we keep paying for and they never go down? How?
They keep on piling.
Yeah, because we've been paying. Is the fact that we haven't defaulted is an indication that we pay.
When you went to the ballot box, did you ask yourself, will these people pay down debt or borrow more?
When I went to the ballot box, I did not know about odious debt. Now I do.
And also, we are not sure who he voted for. Yeah. But nonetheless, it's because I was just going through this Mozambique situation where 18 people in Mozambique were charged with a particular scandal. 2 billion over 2 years. 2019 is when
$2 billion, right?
$2 billion, yes. Yeah, so these guys borrowed that money and then created some companies where they paid themselves bribes and so on and so forth. It's crazy. $200 million in bribes.
Yeah. What? That's 10% of the 2B.
Yes.
So you see, in that case, you're able to show Mozambique went and borrowed. These people paid themselves the money, and this 200 million, some of it made it back to the bankers who underwrote it.
Yes.
If you're able to prove that,
right,
then you can challenge the debt.
See, we haven't gone that route yet.
Perhaps we should.
And I suspect if we did the work,
yes,
for sure.
Now, I want to probably go back to what CT is asking. We have been paying these debts, not defaulting, na tumelipa vizuri sana, because clearly we have not plunged ourselves into a 5-year situation whereby we need to get ourselves out of the international CRB. So we've been paying this debt, but it doesn't seem to go down. Yeah. So maybe from an economist perspective, what's going on? Is it that we keep on paying interest, but the principal is still there?
The money largely is not going into productive capacity or productive use. I think we have a lot of white elephants where we borrowed, put the money in white elephants, and it cannot support the debt. So if what we put it in cannot support the debt, how else are you going to pay it other than borrow more and tax more?
But Edwin, when you borrow as a government, there's a repayment schedule that you have.
Yes.
And we run around because when that day hits, it goes. It's not as though...
you'll have to borrow more before that day.
It's not... No. Before you get to the borrowing more, long before we had this culture of borrowing more, which Uhuru introduced, where you borrow as though there's no tomorrow. Okay? Yeah, he's the one who brought us into this borrowing that just sort of like went 6 trillion, chief. Hiyo ni kujaribu sana. Okay? And I don't see any corresponding development to 6 trillion I don't. Maybe I'm the one who has a limited vision, but my argument is this.
Ujenda Turkana, but yes.
Oh, I've been to Turkana.
You
should mention Wajir because I haven't been there. The point I'm trying to make here, Edwin, is this. If we are furthering an argument about an economy that is going south in terms of its development and progress, which is ours, every little thing that could contribute to it must be looked at and given sufficient and vigorous attention.
I agree. But you have to get the people to do that work.
But that's what we're doing here. We're contributing to the theory about this discussion, but we want to give it even more detail so that it is understood. If there's a concept that relates to the problems we have and it's not understood, then it will not be understood and it will be of no value. So the discussion helps us look at it in greater detail so that it is actually understood. So when you talk about it and then you bring in the ballot, one can connect. And then one can see that, I see. So this is what. And that's where now the knowledge also comes in. Because if you have people who have a handicapped knowledge, handicapped in that they may actually have gone to school and know this matter intrinsically, but it's handicapped because they don't have the will or the intention to actually apply this knowledge that they have correctly. So they actually use this knowledge negatively. Hence the question, even if we borrow to pay, that's a new debt. The old debt which we're paying, how come it doesn't reduce?
And that's the example I was going to give. Let me give you a very simple example. If you go onto the internet and type, I think, fish market in Naivasha. If you're driving, is it Naivasha or Nakuru? There's a structure there. It was supposed to be a fish market. It was never completed. But we somehow borrowed.
It is on the outskirts of Naivasha.
Yeah. We borrowed to build it. Because it has never been used for what it's supposed to be used for, it has no economic productive capacity. You have to think about it in a granular way. You like granularity. The day that money for Naivasha Fish Market is due, what must happen? We have to borrow to pay it. Now,
but you've paid it.
But by borrowing more, and in most cases, we don't even pay. In most cases, you roll forward the debt as we did with Eurobond and say, I will only pay for the interest. No. Let me give you another example before you react. Fantastic. Talanta Stadium. I had it. It's. I can see you've seen the fish market.
Yes,
it has never done any fish, by the way.
Right.
Talanta Stadium, 44 billion. Do you know how much is interest? 15%. What's 15% on 44? That's 6 billion. I am doubtful that the stadium will be able to produce revenue to run itself fully and then pay a 6 billion interest. What will happen when that interest is due? You'll have to borrow again. So we have to connect, and that's what you're saying, where the money is going and the cost. If where the money is going, like that Naivasha fish market, cannot support the interest expense, when that day for paying forget about even, I think now I can confidently tell you why the number will increase. The day the money for Naivasha fish market is due, we won't even worry about paying it. We will go to the lender and say, see, we just roll it forward. Take the principal plus the interest, give me a new loan, and I will service the interest. And what we shall do, we will go get more taxes to service the interest. That's what's happening. Everybody can see.
No, I can't actually.
But you've just told me that.
No, I'm seeing it now when you're explaining it. But I wasn't seeing it in all honesty, because are we saying therefore that every loan we've had, that's what we've done with it?
Most of it. And that's why now people ask, okay, I thought this government said they won't borrow as before, but when the debts are due, they have to roll it forward. The rolling forward, the past interest plus the principal increases the amount of debt, and you just service it. So even without...
So you're servicing it by paying interest?
You're servicing it by paying interest.
Now, so essentially you're saying that we don't have a situation where the principals have been paid.
Because there's no return on investment yet.
No.
Even the Euro bonds, I wouldn't say there's none, but generally speaking, we are just, and public finance is largely about rolling forward the debt and paying the interest, and you'll pay the interest if where you use the money.
Wait. Public finance about what again?
Practical public finance in Kenya today is largely about rolling forward debt.
And that's a smart thing to do.
I didn't say it's a smart thing to do. I'm saying what is happening.
The reality on the ground.
The reality on the ground. Smart thing, you're the one who said.
I mean, if someone is doing it, it's supposed to be smart, isn't it? Because it's supposed to solve a problem that we have. This thing is not solving any problem, is it?
But you see, I don't think the end goal is to solve a problem. It is just to, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like wewe umeingia umepata hii shida iko hapa, unaona okay, so now what do I do so that it doesn't fall on me? Let me just roll it for, let me do what I can do. I'm not necessarily looking at taking care of the initial problem this particular debt was created for. I just need to get it moving forward until my time is done.
Is exactly what's happening now. Once you kick the can down the road, within the next 5 years, you're supposed to then say, what do we then need to do to be able to stop this from happening? Let's make it easy to do business so that a lot of businesses come and pay taxes, and we can use the taxes to pay down debt. Let us reduce corruption. Let's bring more tourists in. Let us make it easy for diaspora to send money. So there's no silver bullet, but there are going to be around 5 things you have to do with a sense of urgency to bring you more money so that when you have to service this debt, you don't borrow more or you don't tax more. That's where we are stuck. Currently, this debt, in most cases, we must tax more or we must borrow more. And that's why the number will continue to increase. I think now it's like 11 trillion or something like that.
Yeah. Kitu kama hiyo ni CT was saying by the time KK is done, it will be at 20 something. But there's a
I
question.
don't have the luxury to say
This man is not only misquoting me. I didn't say that.
Okay, he said by 2027, it will have added $1 trillion every year.
Yes, because if we're to... No, let me...
No, but that one is mathematical. If you look at
yes,
our budget
that's what I'm
today,
saying. If you look at what
we are budgeting to spend 3 trillion and we are collecting 2 trillion, you must borrow $1 trillion.
Acha nikwambie kwa nini ile mathematics yangu ya 20 inaingia. Raila alituambia hapa tukue assured 2032 bado tutakuwa na President Ruto. So if we add up to 2027, that will be about 15 trillion. Another 5 years going in the 1 trillion yearly, won't that be 20 trillion?
Let me now take the position of agreeing with Edwin. Sloganeering.
No, but I think Kenyans are beginning to feel it. People have lost 10% of on the dinner table.
Not beginning to feel it, my friend. They are in pain. They are in enormous pain.
I have a question though. Is there any debt we've ever taken ikafanya kazi yake and there's actual return on investment? For example, I know we borrowed money for SGR. I know we borrowed money for Expressway. Are those things that are actually paying back their debt without easy masters?
We borrowed money for the Expressway.
But si tulijengewa, ndio maana tunalipanga pesa pale ya kuingia kwa hiyo barabara.
And we is who the government.
But we are the government,
and we own the Expressway.
And we that's what I'm asking. Is there an actual return on investment on all any of these projects that we borrowed for?
My belief, and remember I said belief, there has to be, but we would have to improve even how we monitor public finance. To answer that question, you heard what CT was saying. When money is borrowed, that he agrees with, that is not odious, goes to where? Exchequer. It is a big
pool.
Then it will go to all kinds of places. I think we even need to improve our public finance and say there are 2 things. There is tax that we are taxing citizens and using for these general national purposes, education, whatever. Let the 2 trillion come in and use 2 trillion. Let us create another one where we say when we borrow, if we borrow for a road, let it go to an account for a road and let that road send the money back. And if we can't pay, it ought to be very visible that the money borrowed for Thika superhighway we were not able to pay back through thicker superhighway. Therefore, we had to borrow more. So basically what I'm saying, Buvi, is that it's very hard to answer that question, because the way we run public finance, everything is mixed in a pot. So you cannot be able to say this money that was borrowed only went to this project, and therefore the project was able to service the loan or was unable to service the loan. In most cases, we'll borrow, put in a project, and then service that loan with money from taxation. So you cannot be able to actually vet the return profile of where the money went to. It's a big problem. It will need to take citizens understanding it.
Yes.
Putting in place the right leadership that then says, I want to confront this debt issue. And that's why I think some people are unhappy with Trump. Whether he succeeds or not, I'm not sure, but he came and said, look, death in the third world is a bad thing, but should I tax my people to
prevent those debts?
to prevent it doesn't seem like that's my
But are we
problem.
saying that the bulk of the money that they use of their taxes is sent to us?
No.
in terms
I was
of
just
aid?
using that as an example. Somebody has to say, where is the money going?
I am in agreement with you. I have now jumped on the Trump issue.
State of the economy.
Yes,
is the agenda.
because no, you see, what we're discussing is the veracity of the things that we deal with on a daily basis, and how close to truth they are. What percentage of the U.S. budget is actually sent in terms of aid and so forth to any country in the world? What is it?
I don't know it, but probably negligible. What I was saying
It
is
is
that
negligible.
we need somebody who will come and say, this 1 trillion we are borrowing every year, and remember, that is the guaranteed borrowing. There's still some borrowing that is off balance sheet. So this money that we are borrowing, where is it going? And will the destination, even if we are using it to fund education, will the human capital be able to pay it back? If it cannot pay it back, then we are just digging ourselves deeper.
Yeah. There's someone here who's saying, Sian, this is Sian, I hope I'm saying this correctly. Anasema, by the time Edwin will be walking out of the studio, some of us will have developed ulcers. Hapa tuko na nchi kweli? That's a question that Sian is asking.
Of course we have a country.
There is a conversation we had in the first hour of the show between 6 and 7, and one of the conversations was around corruption. Now the corruption we are seeing, because if we calculate all the monies we are losing, President Uhuru told us it's 2 billion daily. But we sat here and we did some mathematics, and we're thinking it might be more as of today, more than 2 billion daily. We could be wrong on that as well. But the point here is, if we go with what President Uhuru had said, is it possible? Because I was for the opinion we might need to shut down the country. Same thing that Sian is saying here, like literally switch it off, tuzime engine, tuzime lights, tuambie kila mtu tokeni, so that we can restructure things. See, the thing here I'm asking is, if we are to tackle this so-called corruption monster called corruption, and we know that every single public institution in this country, almost all of them are corrupt or are headed by corrupt individuals, is it possible to have a cleanup, and how long do you think that would take?
Movie, our problem is not corruption. I keep telling you this. It is not.
That's the symptom.
Yes, it is. It is. It's an outcome.
So shida ni nini city?
Impunity. I keep saying it. Naona hajasink.
No, unacheki sasa impunity
and corruption are intertwined, city. It's the culture.
Whatever. Okay.
Which one gives birth to the other?
Are we able to take out the impunity?
The culture, even before impunity, maybe impunity and culture are the same thing, but we have to, because even what we call about corruption, we'll always talk about politicians, but who is on the demand side when we do all these empowerment stuff? It's you and I who are showing up and saying, I want some stuff for free. Who gives money for free that they worked for? Would you when you go out here, even charity takes a lot of thinking. You have to rationalize. I've seen, and you, when you see a man who's asking you for money in traffic, you'll be like, you can work. A lady, you might be like, okay, maybe the lady is poor. Then somebody who is disabled, you will give more. Even money that you've worked for, you have to rationalize. Now, how will you go to a rally with strong men who can work and then go give them cash?
You see, my argument here is I'm challenging common narratives that we've had, and common narratives that whose feet we lay the problems. Like when we talk of corruption, you talk about it, it's like you've completed the discussion without asking, okay, this thing that we refer to, can we dissect it and understand what it is that we're talking about? That is why I constantly and unashamedly bring in impunity, for a simple reason. People do wrong and continue to do wrong and exacerbate it when they know they can get away with it. If you know you'll pay a steep price, you'll be very hesitant.
Let's concede for the purpose of argument, City, and say, okay, you are right. How do we then resolve impunity? Let's concede to him and say it's not even corruption, it's impunity. How do we resolve
accountability?
How do we?
How do you enforce accountability?
How will we do it? Because if the citizen is not accountable, if the citizen thinks that instead of going to look for a job, and we have to survive, let me go for a rally and get 1,000 shillings. Is that accountability? Because the 1,000 shillings has to come from somewhere.
The culture that you speak of is something that over time has been entrenched. It wasn't always there.
Yes, City, but I want you to help us and figure out how do we entrench accountability.
I'm actually heading there.
Okay.
I'm actually heading there. The hero worship that we subscribe to politicians and the understanding and the narrative that a politician is somebody who brought good things to the people, as in he brought development. It was entrenched and then it has evolved and morphed into something fairly interesting. You determined by belief and acceptance that anything you're going to do and of meaning had to come from a politician. We moved and understood that actually these are our taxes. And this guy's job is to legislate, to oversight and all these things. We got to understand with time. But our understanding was limited when it comes to accountability because we didn't have problems that we could look at and relate directly to the inability of these people to actually represent us as they should. We had problems in the country, but they were manageable. What we have now is a completely different animal. And this is the eye-opening animal that we're speaking of. And the generation that I spoke of that brings about change, we have a change moment because of a new generation who are not looking at things the way it was looked at by the people who brought in the constitution and whatever. They look at it differently. They are a now generation. They want accountability now. And they're taking to task about it now. It is new and we're seeing the reaction. If there was no reaction, nobody would have been shot, nobody would have been abducted. The solution, my friend, is not at a national level. The solution is at an individual and a community level. Do we accept that somebody whom we know last month was somebody for whom 100 shillings was a great deal of money, and they now come in driving a swanky car, and I'm talking about a month, and they are giving everybody they meet along the street before they go to their home 1,000 shillings. Do we ask, Chief, what is it that you're doing? Or are we happy to associate with this person? The culture that you speak of. The people who have exacerbated this are the politicians. I remember a time in Luo Nyanza when the parties that in that part of the world were fighting Kanu. There's something they called taxpayer. They couldn't hold meetings, so they went to funerals. When they went to funerals, they tell people, when somebody comes with money, they said, don't refuse, because people don't take money. Take it. It is your money. Hence the term taxpayer. In my mind, that was when that inoculation of money from politicians and taking it came into being. Anyone who was campaigning with a lot of money, your enemy would just say, Kanu money. And that was to down you. I didn't know I would be living in a time when I could see that is entrenched and it is considered to be normal. But it started somewhere. Now, change also has to start somewhere. And if we cannot hold ourselves to account and we cannot challenge even within our own homes and families, then this battle is lost. We might as well do what Mbuvi has suggested and fold up and decide where we're going to go next. The battle is
not lost, and I think that's what Radio Generation is doing here. What Cytonn, Mbuvi and your team are doing here is what needs to be done, educating people. Let us bring accountability first to myself as a citizen. We are not perfect people. There are no angels here on earth. But let's hold ourselves accountable and let me hold people in the community accountable, and let me go to the ballot and try to elect people who can be accountable. We can make a huge step. But until then,
kidogo itakuwa tricky. So someone has said here that at the end of the day we might not have ulcers, or we might develop ulcers, but by the time Edwin walks out, we shall be so much wiser. That's where we'll come to a close. Thank you so much, Edwin, for coming through and helping us have this conversation. We welcome you again. Come and tell us about also the opportunities at Cytonn. Umesema Cytonn mnataka pesa ngapi investment tuwapatie?
Minimum is just 100 bob.
100 bob?
Yeah, star 8 or 9 hash, or you just go online and you start your investment journey, because that's part of accountability. Build yourself first to hold other people.
With 100 bob? What can I do with 100 bob?
You'd be amazed.
Step by step.
Yeah, you
put it every month, every day, whatever you can. Just make, there's this thing of savings. We always tell people, income minus savings, the balance you can spend. It is not income minus spending, then I save. Save something.
Thank you so much. That is Edwin Dande. He is the CEO of Cytonn Investments.